Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. We're just about a week late saying Happy New Year to everybody. I apologize for last week. So hopefully you can hear me tonight. Give me just a second to write something because I usually see things better then. Can't talk and type at the same time. There we go. Oh, hi. People are coming in. Hello. So I'm so glad to be back. We had a little bit longer break than I thought we were going to have, but my father is doing much better this week. So hopefully that will stay going. He was his New Year's resolution was not to be in the hospital. Well, that lasted about 3 days, so he wasn't very happy, but he's doing okay now. So how is everybody today? Hello. Oh my gosh, all kinds of people are coming in. Hi, Mitzi. Oh, hi, Janan. A lot of people coming in. So is everybody ready to begin starting over? We haven't, I've had so much fun sewing this because I'm actually having fun doing it. When we did it years ago, Judy, Barrie, and I digitized this quilt about 9 years ago. And we, the 2 times that we sewed the entire quilt ourselves, we were in such a hurry the whole time that it wasn't a whole lot of fun. It was work. And I'm just really enjoying it because I'm sewing it for fun. And, oh, hi. Hi, Chris. Oh, Chris and Brenda made it. Hello, girls. You made it. Hi, Joanne. Oh my gosh, there's all kinds of people here tonight. How are you guys doing? Some of you already had this design. So like I said, I taught a class with this design about 9 years ago from 2011, 2012. And we had about 50 people in the class. So some of you, have the design and have seen it. But a lot of you are newer. And, if you haven't been coming to the store for that long, you may never even seen the quilt because it hasn't been hanging in the store now for a long time. So anyway, Judy and I talked about this and we decided maybe we need to pull this out and do it again. And I'm really enjoying some of the people that have it already. Well, hi, Clara. Hi, Kathy. Some of the people that already have it already wanted to drag theirs out and finish it, like if they didn't get it done. Some people finished them and maybe wanted to make another one or make parts of it because it actually works out very well to do it with like for table runners and table toppers. There's a lot of things you can do and besides just make the whole quilt, because if you don't think you're going to get the whole, there's actually 108 pieced blocks and then there's all these little Celtic circles. And I can't remember how many blocks exactly were in it, but there's 112 different blocks in it. So, if you don't have time to do the whole thing, just make a wall hanging or make a little table center or a table runner. It's really fun to do that, and they make up so cute. Oh, hi, Judy. Here's Judy. She's here now. Judy helped me do this. So I was going to tell you the little story some of you have never heard. We were going to do a class with a quilt called Dear Jane 10 years ago. And I'd been writing to the lady who wrote the book for a long, long time. And I never heard from her. And about 2.5 or 3 months before the class was supposed to start, actually it might have been only about 2 months, I finally heard back from her and she told me no, that I could not do that class. Thus the name of the quilt. We called it Starting Over because that's what we had to do. We had to completely start over from scratch with all new blocks, with a whole new quilt. I actually have finished Dear Jane. Dear Jane's done, and we have sewn it out. I mean, Judy and I have sewn it out, but I cannot sell it because that's what was Brenda's wishes, so I did not ever sell that quilt. So we'd made Starting Over. So that's why it's called Starting Over, because we literally had to start over completely from scratch with nothing. And maybe it was good in the long run that it happened, because the quilt was a lot of fun. It was a very intense couple of months because we had already planned the class and we needed to get it done. So we were hours and hours and hours sitting at the computer trying to get these blocks ready. And I really liked the quilt. The quilt turned out beautiful, I thought. And I think everybody enjoyed the classes. Those years ago, we were all pretty new at embroidery, and so was I, and I've been enjoying sitting watching these quilt blocks sew, because there's some things now you have to remember, we did this 9 years ago with software that was 9 years older, and so there's some things that I probably would change now because I know a lot more about digitizing now, but they all sew out really well, and I'll show you some little tricks to keep them neat on the back. And I think you'll really enjoy doing them. So I've sewn out quite a few. I'm going to hold this up. This is what I'm working on. I'm working on a lighter colored one. And this one's done basically with the same colors that the black one was done in, but I picked the pastel versions of it instead. And I think you can see a little bit closer on the camera here. But I've got about 5 rows done on it. Because when you put this together, you put it together on point like this. So the first row only has 1 block in it, and then you kind of work on down. And I'm ready to do row 6, I think. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So I'm working on row 6 right at the moment. So anyway, this is how mine's turning out so far. I'm going to assemble mine as I go so that I have it kind of done when we're done, so I don't leave it all to the end. And what I might do, is everybody hearing me okay? Because Marcia says, hi Jan, video interrupted and paused. Are you guys all hearing me okay? Can you send me thumbs ups if you're still hearing me okay? Everybody seems to be coming in. Everything looks normal on my end. Can you send me some thumbs up if you can hear me okay? Yep, everybody's okay. Okay, Marcia, it must be you. I think everybody's okay because everything looks normal on my end here. So, okay, cool, awesome. So anyway, this is what I'm working on, and we're going to talk through a few things tonight to get you started. A lot of you have purchased the design. Hopefully, you have printed out your book. So I'm going to lay this over here for a second. I made a few more blocks today. Here's the row that I'm working on. Here's row 6. I did this block, and this block today. And I also worked on a rug today, so I did all kinds of stuff. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is we're going to talk through, just a second, I got some comments, so I have to roll down here. Okay, everybody can hear me all right, good. All right. So, hopefully you have printed out your books. Now I have a little binding machine that I like to bind my book, and otherwise put it in a 3-ring binder or something like that so you can get to your pages. And we're going to talk through a few things first, and then I'm going to show you how to make a block. Okay. Some of the things that I wanted to tell you about were your fabrics. And so on the first page of the instructions, or actually the second page, it gives you your fabric requirements. Now what I did with this quilt, because it was white, it has a light colored background, I used the same fabric on the front and the back. You don't have to do that. The original quilt was done with kind of a tan color with actually just muslin on the back. So whatever you want to put on the back is fine. The lighter colors really are pretty because then you can see the colored threads on the back, so I picked a lighter color. The black one was done with black on the front and black on the back. And we used black strips then. Now this one, as you saw just a minute ago, I used kind of a white with it's got a little tiny little gray print in it. And then I used a light gray for the stripping. And that's going to be your sashing. Did you email the book? Or, oh, Kathy, it's in the book. The PDF file for the book is in the download that I sent you. So I sent you a Dropbox link to all the files plus the book. So it's about 150 pages. I never in my life dreamt that I would ever write a book, but I did. And I was really glad when it was done, because writing is not my favorite thing. So, so you do need quite a little bit of fabric, because this quilt does turn out to be twin-sized. So if you want to do the whole thing, you do need about 6 yards for the top and 6 yards for the back. So I got 12 yards of the same fabric so that it was front and back was the same. Okay. And those are 45-inch measurements, 45-inch fabrics. And then you need charm squares. So like the original quilt was scrappy. So we just used charm squares that we bought. Like Judy and I found Applique charm squares, just packets of them from, I don't remember where we got them, maybe Keepsake Quilting or someplace like that. And we just bought a whole bunch of different ones that was just all different colors, and that's what we used. They were all pre-cut, and it was awesome. What I did for this one, so I'm going to turn the camera around so I can show you a few things. Just a second. You don't need to look at me. You can look at the stuff I've got on my desk here. So what I did is I bought, so you can do it scrappy. You know, just cut up some 5-inch squares. It works real well with 5-inch squares. But what I did with mine, and the black one was done this, the picture of the black one, we picked 5 colors. We picked 5 1-yard cuts of fabric and cut them into 5-inch squares. And that gives you enough to do the whole quilt with those 5 colors, because the blocks have have the main color plus up to 5 colors. Different colors in the block. So that's why we chose the number 5, because then there was one color of each, one piece of each color in the block. So that's why we picked the 5. So that's how I'm doing this one, is I have my main color here. Let me pull a piece of main color here for you. So here's my gray with my little flowers, and that's my main color for the background and for the back of the quilt. And then I have this kind of peachy color, a yellow, turn my camera a little bit more, there we go, pink, and I've got a blue and a green. So these were all this was 1 yard of each one of these that I just cut into 5-inch squares. I like to use my little cutting machine. I've shown you that little cutting machine, that little Sizzix machine, or if you have an Applique quilt with a 5-inch die, it makes cutting this quilt very fast. So I mean, I got this quilt cut in about 3 hours because I just used my 5-inch die. So it worked very well. And I cut up all of my background squares. So if you, on page 2 of the instructions, the second part of it is how much fabric you need. You also need, for the sashing pieces, you need 2 yards for the top and 2 yards for the back. They don't have to be the same colors. So if you want to have separate color on the front and a different color on the back, that's fine. Our original quilt had 2 colors. We had the muslin that we used on the back, and we had a darker strip on the top. So this one, I'm using the same on the front and the back. So I just bought 4 yards total. And then I go into the cutting instructions. So almost everything's cut into 5-inch squares, with the exception of the rectangles, which will become these border blocks over here. And there are some of the triangles. I don't know if I have a picture close of the triangle here, but the triangles that fit, this quilt's on point. So let me grab my quilt here. Here's some of these setting triangles. So I put them in a file that you can do 2 of these at a time in a 5-inch square, or a 5 by 7-inch hoop, I should say. So that way you can get 2 of them at a time. And those you cut in like 6 by 8-inch rectangles for the front and the back. So that's all explained in the cutting instructions. And then you need to cut strips, 1-inch strips out of your sashing pieces. We're going to talk about assembly a little bit later. I wanted to get everybody started making blocks. And then that's what these strips are for. They start out as 1-inch strips, and that's how you attach the whole thing together, because there's batting in here, there's batting and top and back. So when you're done, you're done. It's all quilted. You don't have to quilt it after the fact. So it's all done. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about batting, though. When I made this originally, you'll see in the instructions that it says warm and natural batting. That was really all we could get at that time. You know, it was quite a long time ago, and that's what we bought, was warm and natural. Warm and natural is very stiff. I actually don't care for warm and natural batting that much, and so I'd highly recommend using a softer batting for this. The squares are small, and there's some embroidery in them. You know, these are embroidered and not, excuse me a second, I'm grabbing another block. You know, these are embroidered, and they have some stitches in them and some satin stitching because it's applique, okay? And so they're going to come out a little bit stiffer than a standard quilt block will be, even after it's been quilted. So what I did this time is, what I'm using is, I just have lots of scraps. I'm using Hobbs 80/20, and oh my gosh, it is so much softer. It's just amazing, and it's still not going to be like super soft, but it is going to be a lot softer if you use something besides warm and natural. The other one that I really like is that Dream Cotton, you know, the Quilter's Dream Cotton batting, and I like Request, which is very thin and very soft, so that would also work very well. I just happen to have lots of Hobbs, so I cut all my little pieces out of all my scraps of my Hobbs, and these are much better. Also gives them a little bit more poof, I noticed. So I think I would recommend Hobbs or the Quilter's Dream Cotton Request is the model for that, and that's what I would tell you to use for the batting. When you trim these blocks, the next section is trimming, and what you do is, remember, there's batting in here and there's backing. All of the inside blocks, everything, all the triangles, all the Celtic circles, all of the piece blocks are going to be cut 1/4 inch through all the layers all the way around. Okay, we're going to cut the border blocks differently, so we'll talk about those later. But all of the inside part of the quilt is going to be trimmed the same way. So I'm going to have batting in there and the backing in the top. So when I go to put my sashing on, there's already batting in there, and you'll never know that you've got pieces. It's going to feel like it's all in one piece when you put the whole thing together with the sashing. Okay, second, I think I've got a couple comments. I'm just trying to make sure. Oh, we just got some people coming in. Okay, so that's what trimming the piece blocks, Celtic blocks, setting triangles, corner triangles, and corner blocks. Everything on the inside of the quilt is trimmed the same way through all 3 layers, 1/4 inch away. So I just lay my ruler, you know, my regular ruler, along this line, or maybe just a hair inside of it, and just trim 1/4 inch away. Okay, so does that make sense to everybody for the trimming of the blocks? So all the inside blocks are trimmed this way. The next trimming information is about the border blocks. I don't think anybody will be getting to the border blocks for a little bit, so we'll talk about that trimming when we get to the border block, because it is totally trimmed differently, but all the inside blocks are done the same way. Okay? So does anybody have questions about fabric? You can do this. Scrappy, you can do this. So the part that takes the most fabric is like your top and your back. You know, that's the largest portion of your fabric, is the top and the back, and then your basically your stripping. But you can use your scraps for the 5-inch squares. Scrappy would be great. Our original one was Scrappy. Really liked that. We wanted to do the black one totally different, so that's why we decided to do the black with the 5 colors. But when we get to sewing one of these, the black fabric also made another problem, that then I had to open up every single one of these designs and add lines, because with the dark background, you need to trim out that background, because if you're using lighter colors on top of it, you can't leave the dark underneath because it made everything look gray. So I will explain a couple of things as we do the block tonight, so that you can see why I had to add some lines in there. But if you're using a light background like me, you know, I'm using this really light colored background, I just leave the whole thing underneath. I don't trim anything else, so it makes the block go much faster. So you may consider that also when you're picking your fabric. I kind of like the light background with the pop of the color. The dark one, though, with those bright colors was pretty stunning. And if you've never seen the quilt really up close, it is really pretty cool. That black one. Judy and I swore that we will never make another black quilt, though, as long as we live, because that one was about did us both in. So I chose a lighter color, but I actually chose the same colors as the black quilt, but in the white instead, the white and gray instead of the black. So I liked the colors in it, and I just wanted to do something sort of like it. So, okay. Now, does anybody have questions about the fabric? Everything's written out in the book about how much you need and everything, and it's on the first couple of pages there. Okay. And the cutting is super easy. You just mostly, it's 6 by 8 inch rectangles and 5 inch squares. And then I even cut my batting, my 5 inch batting squares with my Sizzix, or you can, if you have an AccuQuilt, you can do that too. Okay, so that that's the easiest way to cut these things is with one of those cutting machines, because it goes so fast that way. All right, because I got this fabric only about I started this about 2 weeks ago, and I actually bought the fabric, and then the next day I came home, cut it all, and started it the next day. So it actually went, the cutting went very fast with the machine. So okay, so let's do a little bit. I'm going to show you a couple more things. So we're going to skip a few pages in here. This is the trimming of the border block, so we'll talk about that later. I want to move over here to page number, oh, here it is, page number 12. Page number 12 is kind of a map of the quilt. So hopefully you can see this. And if you notice, I have marked them. This is row A. So remember, this is on point. So we're going to put it together from the corner. Okay? A second, I got a comment, so I got to see if I can get this thing to scroll up. Are we using embroidery bobbin for the whole quilt? No, I'm going to talk about that in a minute, Mitzi. I actually do change to matching thread in the bobbin after I put the back on. If you only want to use bobbin thread, you may do that. Some people did that. They just didn't want to change it. But I like to change it and have the pretty colors on the back. So like this one I just did today. See how I have the colors, the matching colors on the back. Okay. So I did use partial bobbin thread on here just because it was white. So I didn't take the time to change the white, but I did do the other colors. So we'll talk about that in a minute when we do our first block here. So this chart is very helpful because it tells you where everything goes. So this is row A, row B, row C, and they all, the numbers of the blocks then go from 1, 2, 3. They're all from the left. Okay, and so when you start looking at the blocks in the folders that I sent you, then you will have them all numbered from the left. Okay, so like the A row only has 1 block, the B row has 2, the C row has 3, and so on. Okay. So this chart comes in real handy, and this is how I mark off, you know, what row I'm doing, and if I've done my row, I just kind of mark it off here while I'm working. And then, as you can see, when you get down further, like down here, see how the rows get shorter again. So we're going back to, and then so there's a total of, what is it, 20, how many letters? There's 26 letters in the alphabet. I think there's 20 rows. Is it 20 or 21 rows total? And they go through row T, and row T only has 1 block. Okay. All right, so that is the block diagram. So that's on page 12, and that's a very helpful page so you can kind of mark off what you're doing. Okay. Now let's see. I wanted to look. There's some more assembly instructions. And like I said, we'll get into those a little later. You might want to kind of read through them as you're working on your quilt. And okay. So then when we get to the next pages, starting on page 24, are the actual blocks. And they are in order in the book. A1 is row A, and it's the first block. So, of course, there's only one block in A, we saw. And then B has two, so it's B1 and B2, and so on. Okay? So that's how, and all of the instructions, I tried to keep the instructions very consistent throughout the whole book. So hopefully, and if you find typos or anything like that, let me know, because I had the girls doing that for me before too. So if you see any more, let me know and I'll fix them, okay? There was a lot of words to fix. So I was still fixing many months later. So, okay. So all of these different rows are in here. And again, if you don't want to make the whole quilt, don't make the whole quilt. Just make a table runner. I wanted to show you my table runner. I didn't bring it over here. Just a second. In fact, one of my students that did this class years ago only made table runners. She made the whole quilt, but she made them all into table runners. So here's a table runner that we did, just a table topper. It's like a square table topper with some of our favorite blocks in it. And we kind of did a patriotic one. I think it was a little 5-inch square pack that I came across, and I just liked it and I bought it, and I made this little tabletop, this little table center. Okay. So this was a little small piece you could make. And this other gal, it was funny because I think that's all she made though was she made all these table runners and stuff for Christmas gifts, and just made them with the blocks she was doing. I think she actually did do the quilt or most of the quilt too, but she made a bunch of table runners. So what's cool about this quilt is that when I did this years ago, you know, a lot of us for carry-around machines only had that little small machine that is 4x4. So this whole quilt can actually be done in a 4x4 hoop. So if you know of somebody that has a really small machine, the entire quilt can be done in the 4x4. The border blocks are actually 5 inches wide, but I made a 4-inch version that I had that I used a split hoop that little bitty machine used. And so they're only 4 inches wide, but the whole quilt could be done on a 4x4. And I had 2 or 3 girls that's all they had, and they completed this entire quilt on that little machine. So it is possible. It's a little more work to get it through the machine to sew it together, but it is possible to do it all in the little machine. So with that being said, the whole quilt can be done on a 4x4 and a 5x7. So most of us now, you know, have bigger machines than that, but it is kind of fun to get out my 4x4 hoop again and do these blocks. And I did it purposely like that because I wanted the people with the small machines to not be left out, because at that time, you know, that's 9 years ago, you know, a lot of people had those little machines, those little 4x4s, and they kind of got left out of a lot of the classes because they were 5x7 or bigger. So this was something I wanted to do so that everybody could come and join in the class. So okay, so are there any other questions? As we go through one of these blocks, then you'll understand the instructions a little bit better. And does everybody understand everything? You can send me thumbs ups if you want to. They come through faster. Is everybody understanding about the cutting and what fabrics you need? Did everybody find it in your books? If you send me thumbs ups, they come up faster than words. Everybody's quiet out there. If I put everybody to sleep. Oh, here they come. Here they come. Okay. So everybody's good with that? Okay, it's a lot like cutting other quilts, but remember, this is an embroidered quilt. When I started doing these quilts with Judy, I was not a quilter. I still don't really consider myself really a quilter. I do quilt traditionally now, but I learned to quilt through my embroidery. So these are all very traditional blocks, but they're just done non-traditionally, okay? All right, so I happen to be on row 6, so I'm not going to do block number 1. I'm going to flip the book here, and I happen to be working on row F, which is row 6, and I am going to do the Ohio Star. This is the one I'm ready to do this one. Okay, so on the Ohio Star, as you can see, there's the main color, which is the A color. And then the B and the C can be any colors you want. And I'm trying to kind of keep my colors kind of, you know, even, so that I'm using even numbers of all my 5 colors. And I'm going to do this particular block in, whoops, second here. Gotta get my hoop over here. I'm going to do this block in yellow and blue. Those two are kind of the ones I wanted to use for this block. I think I'll use the blue for the B fabric, and I'll use the yellow for the C fabric. Okay? So, to get ready to do this, now the other thing in the instructions that I think it was in here, let me read the cutting instructions or the requirements. It says 5 10-yard rolls of Floriani no-show mesh, or 1 starting over pre-cut mesh stabilizer kit. Now, I like pre-cut fabric stabilizer. And if you want the pre-cuts, drop by the store and I'll get them ordered for you. I love these because then I don't have to cut. So this is an 8-inch square of no-show mesh, and I can order these for you. I use these in the 4x4 hoop, and then there's a 9-inch by 12-inch piece that I use in the 5x7. And they're awesome because I hate cutting stabilizer. So that's what the little stabilizer kit is, and I can order these. If some people want them, let me know. Come into the store and I'll get them ordered for you, because it will save you a lot of time. So, okay, that's what that is. So I've got my piece of stabilizer. The only thing I'm going to hoop is my stabilizer. Now, I like to use my magnetic hoops, but I'm finding for this that it actually is easier to hoop the stabilizer in the standard hoop, because the stabilizer is just a hair short for the magnetic one. The magnetic hoop's a little longer this way, and it was a little hard to get in there, so I'm using a standard hoop for these because it seems to work better for me. Okay, do you know how much? I don't know, Pat. I'm gonna have to look because I haven't looked it up, but I could do a little kit for you that would have both the 8-inch squares and the 9x12s. So if you could text me or email me that, I will look it up for you. Okay? Because I haven't had any for a while. You can buy them in like 125 packs. And what I did before is we just kind of put the 9x12s and the 8x8s together, because you need a lot more 8x8s. So, but if you could email me, I will get that figured out for you. All right, so I have got my no-show mesh stabilizer in my hoop here. And I have all my pre-cut 5-inch batting. So here's a piece of my Hobbs that's very soft, my Hobbs batting. And I'm going to lay that in my hoop to get started here. So in the instructions, it says hoop the stabilizer. This is part number 1. Place the batting square in the hoop. Stitch number 1 using a neutral color thread in the needle and bobbin thread in the bobbin. So I am going to start with bobbin thread. Now, this is the little shortcut. If you are using a light colored background like I am, if you're using a dark colored background, you're going to do the instructions exactly as they read in the book. You're going to sew the outline. Is there any other stabilizer that is good? Just use, you just want to use a no-show mesh of some sort, Chris. A no-show mesh stabilizer, because it needs to be soft. So, and then it stays in the quilt. So that's what you need to use. Okay. If you are using a dark fabric as your background, you are going to sew the number 1 outline. It's going to be like a road map of your block. You're going to sew that on the batting only. You are not going to sew it on your fabric. If you are using light colored fabric, like I am, I'm going to also put in my piece of fabric over the batting from the very beginning, because then we can skip some steps, because I do not need to trim the fabric, the background fabric out from underneath the pieces. Because if you don't, if you have dark fabric and you don't do that, like if you're going to use brown or a dark blue, your lighter colored fabrics may show that color through the back. Okay, that's what we ran into when we started the that's when we how we ran into it when we started that black quilt. So I had to open up all 108 of those blocks and add lines so that we could trim the backing out. Okay, so normally if I have a dark black background, I'm just going to have a piece of batting in here, and then I'm going to sew out step number 1. In my case, since I do have a light backing, I'm going to put my light backing in at the same time. Okay, so we're going to choose. Now I put these in folders for you, and the reason they're in the folders they are is this is the way we gave the blocks to my students originally. So they're in like blocks by a certain number of rows, and it's in under starting over. And okay, so row A through D was in one folder, and then E and F are in a second folder. So I'm in E and F right now because that's the ones I'm doing. And this was F4. So I'm going to scroll down here, and they're all labeled by the letter they are. And here's my Ohio star. So we're going to get the Ohio star tonight. Now this one has, like I said, 2 other colors besides the main fabric. Okay. So again, if you are using a dark fabric as your background, you will only have batting in here. Since I am using a light background, I'm going to put my background on top now, because I'm going to show you my little trick so you can get through the design a little bit faster. Okay. No, Nancy, it is right side up. The background is right side up on the top. So she had a question about the backing. So my background being light, as it is, though this is right side up in the hoop. Okay, so the batting's in there, and I put my background in here, but it is right side up. Okay. All right, so I'm going to stitch out number 1. And whoops, if I got it. Okay. Get this down here so you can see it stitched. The other thing I have done with my threads, let's talk a little bit about thread while we're doing this. Since we're sewing, we're going to talk about the thread now too. I have bobbin thread in the bobbin. Okay, I have bobbin thread in the bobbin. When the backing is not on the underneath side of the hoop, we can use bobbin thread. It saves a lot of money. You're not using as much thread. I do like the pretty colors to show through on the back, so I did change then to embroidery bobbin thread in the bobbin when I did my satin stitching and my decorative stitching. Okay, since my block is white, you know, my fabric is white, I actually left bobbin thread in for the white, which is fine. There's a little stippling in here, and I made all my stippling white because I wanted it to blend in. If you want your stippling to be darker and show, then you should probably change your bobbin thread to that matching. Okay, so mine is not. Mine is just white. All right, so we're going to go ahead and sew out step number 1. Step number 1 is going to be kind of a little, and you notice that I don't have anything taped or anything. You just have to kind of make sure it doesn't scooch on you. It's going to go around the outside edge. And then it's going to do the little shape of the block on the inside. Oh, there it goes. And like I said, I've noticed I've been enjoying sitting here watching my blocks sew. I also noticed that as I progressed in the blocks, they did get progressively better. There was a few things I would change now, but the software was a lot different then, and I didn't have as many controls 9 years ago. And, you know, I know a lot more about digitizing now. But they all sew out very well, and they look really nice. And I'll show you how to do a little trimming on the back to make the back look even nicer. Okay, so there's our, oops, we got one more little thing to do. Has to do another square in the center. Now the newer machines that we have now, actually I leave the jump trimmer on all the time now. Originally we turned off our jump clippers because this was done at the time of the 4000D, and that 4000D had those really long tails. So the older machines that clipped had really, really long tails in the back. Okay, so if this were a dark background quilt block, we would not have had this fabric on here. I would just have the white thread on my batting. Okay, then it says step number 2 is sew or skip the A's. Now I put letters in the design. You will never sew the letters. Okay, the reason I put them in the design is so that they would show up on the screen, so that you could see what fabric was going where. Okay, so you will never sew the letters. So to skip letters or skip a step on our machine, you're going to touch this little icon that looks like a needle, a plus minus needle. And then on my machine, I have little arrows. Some of you will have like little spools with a plus or a minus sign. And I'm going to go down. I want to go down to the next color because I don't want to do my A. And I want to do the letters, but I had to put them in the design so you could actually see them on the screen. Otherwise, sometimes some of the blocks were a bit more complicated and it was hard to tell where the fabric went. So I put them in here so you could see where the fabrics were. Okay, so that's the only purpose for the letters. You will never sew them. Now, this is where the trick goes. Place, so for, if I had a dark colored fabric, I would now then have placed my dark fabric in my hoop for step number 3, and then I would trim out the middle section. So you can see here on the screen, this middle section here, all of that's going to be other fabric. So I would have trimmed that out, the background fabric, that like black background fabric. We would have stopped the machine and trimmed all that black fabric out of there, so that when I put the colors on, it wouldn't bleed through. Okay, in my case, I don't have to worry about that. So in my case, I get to skip some steps. So like if I would have sewn this out, if I got my black background, I'd sew out number 3. And then number 4 is those letters again. Well, remember, we don't do the letters ever, so we skip those anyway. And then I would skip down to number 5. And what number 5 is the first colored fabric. But in number 3, I would have trimmed out all that dark background from underneath so that I'd be laying my light colored fabrics on the batting. Okay? So if depending on the fabrics you choose for your quilt, if you choose light colored backgrounds, you sew out number 1 with your background fabric in it and skipped to number 5. And each block is going to be the same. If you are doing a black, navy blue, dark brown fabric, you need to sew out every step separately and do an extra trim, because otherwise you're going to see that dark colors through your colored block parts. Okay, so that's why I like to use light backgrounds, because then I can skip some of the steps. But I had to put them in there because when we did that black one, it would not work right. Yes, Deb, you could do that. Deb asked, could you put back the B&C fabric with like shape flex instead? And yes, you could. However, these blocks are already relatively stiff, and that's going to make your quilt a little stiffer. So it's actually a little easier to do the trimming, because then you don't have to put anything else on your fabrics and make it even stiffer, because it's small blocks and they get a little stiff. And if you add shape flex, it's going to be even stiffer. So it's kind of up to you what you want to do. That's why I pick a light background, that I don't have to worry about it. Okay, so in other words, with light background, I put my light background in with the batting, so number 1, and then skip to number 5. Okay, so we have just done, we've skipped to number 5. All right, now it says place the fabric B in the hoop right side up, stitch number 5. So I'm going to use, see, B is going to be the most of my fabric, so I wanted to put this one in blue. Okay, so I've got my pattern in my block here. I want to put my 5-inch square of blue over the quilt, and then I'm going to sew out number 5, or over the quilt block, I should say, and sew out number 5. So if you have chance, comment, some of you comment to me if you're going to be doing the quilt, how many of you are doing a dark background, or if you're just going to do a light background. So if you have, while you're listening and watching, let me know if you're doing dark backgrounds or light backgrounds. Okay, so now the other thing about starting over is, we talk about applique, and normally with applique you have a placement line and then a tack down line. Well, these are kind of not just applique. These blocks are kind of applique and reverse applique, because I just lay all the stuff down right away. Second here. Probably light background, okay. No, Lynn, that will not be a problem. You're putting a dark backing. No, that's fine. You won't have to trim. If you have a light top fabric, the back can be dark. That's fine. Yeah, the light one is, the light one is really easier to do. So this is where the trimming comes into play. We have to trim, and if you look at the picture, so that's why I always have my book laying here, because I need to look at my picture here. I'll put my book up here, okay? And I'm going to look at my quilt block. So B is going to be these triangles here on the outside edges of my star here, but then these blocks right here need to be C. So I need to trim those out of these little triangles, and I also need all of this outside stuff, okay, trimmed out. Now if there are blocks, now this is a little different one, so it's a star. What you need to do is you need to trim close to the stitches, because we want this to be blue right here. If you had like a square here in the corner and there was some fabric out here, leave the fabric on the outside edges where your seam allowance is going to be, or where you're going to be trimming, because if you trim that off close to, you're going to have raw edges showing. So make sure anything that's on the outside of the block, so the way I state it is trim close to the stitches, but you want to leave fabric on anything that's out here on the edges. And the triangles don't count if it's a straight line right here. You want to leave this out here in the edge so that you can get that in your seam allowance when you go to put it together. Otherwise, you'll have a raw edge showing. Does that make sense to everybody? Probably light. Oh, good, good. Most everybody's doing light ones. Okay, so this one is a triangle. So these triangle points are going to be all covered with satin stitches anyway. So I'm going to start trimming, and we're going to be doing, this is applique trimming and reverse applique, because we're going to be taking some pieces out from in the center. So this one, I'm going to trim the square out in the corners. Now the other thing I do is when I'm cutting, when I'm trimming these 5-inch squares down to the parts that I want, and also I would highly recommend double curved scissors. These are 6-inch double curved Ginger embroidery scissors. These work really well for this because everything's a little on the small side, because they're 4-inch blocks. Okay, so I'm going to trim around here, and then let me show you, and then I'll show you how to do the inside trimming. So this was a big learning curve for all of us, because it was not only applique, it was reverse applique. And so reverse applique is when you trim something out and leave a hole in the middle. So that's kind of neat. And these blocks are done with, not all of them are with reverse applique, but a lot of them are. And it also cut down on all the steps. So we didn't have so many steps then. And once you get the hang of it, it's very easy. You can see, can you see that I'm just kind of going around here? Let me pull this down just a little closer. Okay, going around the little corners here. And all the blocks are done the same way. So remember, if you're doing those light backgrounds, a lot of you said you are, just put your light background on your batting piece. So step number 1, and then skip to number 5. Okay, so now I need to also get, according to my picture, see right here where C is going to be in this inside piece right here. Okay, I need to trim out these little triangles that are right here. So if you just kind of carefully stick the little point of your scissor in there and just clip a little hole, you can get up to those lines. And just be careful not to cut your backing fabric. And these little scissors have a curved point, so I don't catch my backing fabric very easy with them because they're kind of pointed up. So see, there's the first one. So I cut out that little area, and that's reverse applique because there's something underneath that we're trying to expose. So we're going to go around here. Oops. Let's get this one. Yeah, I've been really enjoying making these because I spent a whole day making like 4 rows and putting them together, and it was so fun. I haven't done this quilt for a long time, and it turns out really cute. And it was fun to do a different color. I had a lot of fun picking out the fabrics because I knew I wanted to use a gray on the background, but this is actually white, and it has like teeny little gray flowers on it. All right, so we're getting close. We're going to do the last one here. And the reason I am cutting this off is because if you don't, and if you left it on, these little reverse applique pieces, if you left these in, your other color may be lighter. Like in my case, my other color is a lot lighter, and it's going to show. But it doesn't show through the white background, okay? Now, if you have some bigger pieces like this, keep them. I have a little box down here that, you know, some of these bigger pieces, if you want to conserve your fabric, I have a little box that I just throw them in, and then I might use them for another small area later. So these little ones are pretty small, okay? So that's how I kind of conserve some of my fabric. Let's see here. Can you move the camera for us to see the cut? Oh, I'm sorry. Could you? I think I moved it after you said something, Mitzi. So we'll cut another one, okay? Well, the next one will get cut too, so you'll be able to see better. All right. So now the next step is number 6. Well, it's sew or skip the C. Well, we don't really need to sew the C. We know where they're going to be. So remember, we don't sew the letters. So I'm going to go down and get rid of my letters. Okay. Now we're ready for the C fabric. Get my book out of here again. We're going to lay this down. I'm going to put my C fabric in, which is this yellow. And, you know, if I would have had a smaller piece, see, my yellow is going to be like right in here. You know, I could have laid a piece of yellow in just that little spot. In fact, I might just do that because then I can conserve the rest of this piece, see? So I only need to cover up this area because that's where C is going to be, that inside square area. So I'm just going to maybe do that so that I won't have to use that whole piece of yellow. Like that. Now I am piecing these all with kind of a neutral thread. I'm using a white because my background is real light colored. So I'm using a white for piecing. I could have also used, I'm going to use this pretty gray color for the sashing, you know, or the satin stitching. You could have pieced with that as well. Either one's fine, but I usually try to pick a very neutral color to piece with, one that's not going to show through my satin stitches. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead. I've got this light, and I don't have the whole thing covered up, and you can. There's plenty enough. If you just want to lay it down like this, that's fine. I'm just going to be a little conservative, and I'm just going to use the corner here and cover up that inside piece. and I'm going to sew out number 7. Now some of the blocks have more steps because there's more different colors in it. This one only had 2 other colors besides the white. So some of them have more steps, of course. And now it's going to do the little square in the middle because we have more reverse applique to do. And I tried to go around the area where you're going to be trimming 2 times so that you have plenty of stitches to be trimming against. Okay, so now we have to trim again. Let me get this camera a little closer. Sorry about that, Mitzi. Hopefully you can see it a little better this time. I'll get a little closer. Okay, so we have to trim around the square here, and then we're going to do the reverse applique in the center because I want the blue to show in the center. So we trim it this way. Helps me if I hold up the fabric with one hand and trim with the other. Okay. So see, I'll have a pretty good size scrap here that I can maybe use on another block later. So I'm going around the outside square first. Oops, got it stuck. Okay. And then I want to expose that blue fabric in the center. So again, here's our reverse applique. So just carefully trim a little hole in there and just stick the tip of your scissor in, and then trim out that center little square to expose the blue fabric underneath. I was trying to alleviate some steps by doing this, and it was actually a very good trimming exercise for everyone. We learned to get trim close and with very small things. So did a lot of trimming with this block. Okay. So I'm going to blow some of those little ends there. I got a few little ravels. Okay. Second here. Oops. Okay. So we got the trimming. I got kind of a little piece sticking out, so I better get that. It's going to show probably. All right, there we go. My fabric is a little bit ravelly, and if you have ravelly fabric, whoops, sorry. If you have ravelly fabric, if you use a little bit of well, I use the starch you make with vodka and water. You know, a little bit of starch on them. It just gives it a little bit of body. So, okay. So there is our trimmed block, and we're ready to do the final. We're going to put some decorative stitches, some little stippling in here. Okay. So step number 8 says, using fabric glue stick, attach the backing fabric to the underside of the hoop, centered. So I'm going to turn my hoop upside down. This is how you put the back on. I'm going to grab and I've got the same fabric for the back. So I'm going to grab my black backing fabric, and you want to be able to see the pretty side. Okay, so it's going to be, you know, right side up, even on the back. We're going to put the wrong sides to the stabilizer. I'm going to take my fabric glue stick, and you can use tape if you want to, but if I use tape, inevitably it flips a corner over. I love the little glue sticks. These are the Dritz fabric glue sticks. I have these at the store. These work great. Then I'm going to take my fabric, make sure it's right side up. This one's a hard one to tell. And I'm going to put it on the back of the hoop, smooth it down, and then I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to press down with my fingers to make sure it's stuck to the back. Like that. Okay? Then when I slide this in and put my hoop back in, I'm going to just peek underneath to make sure that nothing flipped over on me. We don't like flipper-doos on our quilts, okay? All right. Let me get my fabric out of the way here. All right. Now, this step number 8 is going to sew around the outside edge, and it's going to sew that backing on so that we don't have to worry about it moving. So we're just going to sew the backing down. Okay, so it just went around the outside edge. Now I do have kind of a white thread in here that I've been piecing with, and that's the color I want in my stippling. So I'm going to leave the white in here. When I put the backing on, so see the backing is now on the back of this block, I normally now would change my bobbin thread to match everything. So I want, you know, I want my bobbin thread to match the thread I'm using on top. Since this was white, I've been lazy and I've just been using bobbin thread for the white, because you really can't tell if I put bobbin thread, you know, embroidery thread in it or not. And it just saves some time and some money. So I'm just going to leave my bobbin thread in for this step because I have white background. And this step, number 9, is going to be the stippling. It's going to stipple around all these little pieces around here. Now when I did these, there are a few jumps in here. Most of us have machines with jump clippers now. And so there will be some little knots on the back. So I'll show you the next step before I go on to the next step. I'll show you, I always trim well all the little fingers that are sticking up because the satin stitches cover them all up and you won't even see them at all. So like this one, while this is sewing, I'll hold this up. You can see the satin stitches, if there were any little jump clips or any little tails sticking up, my satin stitches have completely covered them. So the back of this block looks real neat. Okay, so I'll show you that here in a minute when we get to the next step. So is everybody following along okay? Can you send me some more thumbs up? Is this making sense to everybody? Just remember to skip your letters. You don't want to sew the letters, so anytime you see a letter, skip it. Ask me how I know. I actually sewed a couple letters in the other day, so whoops. But I did that so you could see them on the screen. Otherwise, some of the blocks have a lot of little pieces, and they were so hard to tell where the fabrics were if you couldn't see it on the screen. You know, that's why the letters are there. It's just kind of a tool. This is going to be pretty. I like the yellow and the blue together. Okay, oops. I'm going to take that piece of yellow that I had left. I'm going to put it down here in my little box so I have it in my little scrap box. I figure I'll conserve as much fabric as I can. You're all going to laugh at me when I tell you where I got all this fabric. I went to my favorite store in Anamosa. I went to Walmart, and I got all this fabric at Walmart. I got all the colors and all of the white, all at Walmart. So you're all going to laugh at me. I know it's not as nice a fabric as some of the fabric, but it was just pretty, and I liked especially the background. I just really like that background with the little flowers on it. And I thought, well, I'm just going to see what I could find. So I had to buy 2 bolts of this. It was an 8-yard bolt, and I had to buy 2 bolts of it to get the front and the back. But so that's where I got my fabric. I go up there to see my dad, you know, and I have to go shopping, so. And I think I got the pretty little print that I'm using for the sashing. I think I got that at Helios a while ago, and I got it for a background, and I didn't make the quilt, so I'm using it for the strips on this one. So we're getting about done. We've got a couple more little spots to do. I was just doing the stippling in the white. So what I did before I started is I just picked 5 colors. So we were talking about thread. Well, I'm going to piece with white because it matches my stippling of my background. And then I just picked a thread that matched each color. So this quilt only has 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It has 7 colors because I wanted to put the satin stitches in gray. to match my sashing. And then I wanted a blue, a yellow, and then the other ones were like peach and green and pink. So I just have my 5 colors of my other fabrics. I have the white for my background stippling, and then I have a gray. So I only have 7 colors in this. So how I do this then, so like this next step, number 10 on this block, is some decorative stitches in the center section. So it's going to be blue. So the way I'm doing mine is I'm just going to pick blue. I don't have to worry about what colors I'm picking. I don't have to have 6 million colors open. So if you're doing a scrappy one, you may have a lot of colors. Now, one of my students did her entire quilt with 1 color. It looked great. She used scrappy. Now, what I'm going to do here, see, I'm cutting all the, see these little ends that are sticking up? I'm just going to trim these all off. Because after I trim them, the satin stitches are going to cover them all up. And you won't even know they're there. Just try not to cut through the knots. You know, just cut the ends off. The ones that are out here on the edges out here, those are going to be in the seam, so you won't really need to trim those, but the ones that are down in here you want to kind of trim. And then when the satin stitches go over them, you won't even see them. So I just spend a little time trimming as I go. The best way to do is trim as you go. Don't wait till the end. Just trim everything as you're going. Okay? So I got those little ends trimmed. Oops, I still got another one here. It's trying to hide. Okay? Get those trimmed. There we go. Okay, now we're doing this little decorative piece in here, so I want to put blue in the bobbin also because I want the backing to be pretty. So I'm going to take my bobbin thread out, and I wound 1 bobbin with every color from my quilt. So I have my bobbins pre-wound, and then I just wind more as I go. So I'm going to put the blue in. And then I'm going to put blue in the top. Whoops, second here, I'm stuck on the thread. Take my white out. And we're going to put the blue in. I have all my colors just sitting up here on the top of my machine. I love these new luminaires. They have the lids that stay on, and then there's a little shelf to put your thread on, so it's awesome. They just sit up there and they're so happy. All right. This is that little middle section, and I'm going to go ahead and put this. So I've got my blue in the bobbin, so I like to keep my matching. Now, if you want to just do it all with bobbin thread, some of the girls did it that way. They didn't want to change their bobbins. I had some gals that just did the same color thread through the whole thing and did all the stippling in the same color and everything, and then they just left the same color in the bobbin all the time. But I wanted it to have colors on the back, so it's going to do this little decorative stitch in the middle there. And then I think the next step is going to be, oh, there was a little decorative stitch here too on this one. So there's the decorative stitch in the center, and that was done in blue. Second, I need to trim a little bit. Now it's going to do a little decorative stitch in the yellow. So I'm going to turn this over. Trim, again, I'm going to trim anything that's kind of sticking up, these little ends. I just kind of trim as I'm going, keep it neat on the back. And then I'm going to put my yellow in the bobbin. And the yellow on the top. Is everybody doing okay out there? I had a lot of fun. Judy and I had a lot of fun doing this. It was a lot of work. We worked very hard on this, and the quilt turned out good, and very well, and we were very proud of it. We actually, believe it or not, we do have a patent. We got to the patent office, and we have a patent on this quilt. So that's why on the front page, like at the bottom, you'll see the little patent information, the copyright information. Then we went to the copyright office, not patent, but copyright office, sorry. So, okay, so now we're going to do the yellow. I got the yellow in the thread, and I've got the yellow in the bobbin. So we're going to do step number 11. It's just going to do a little triangle in there. Oops, looks like I missed a piece of white there. There we go. But I kind of like the colors of this. It's going to turn out really cute, I think. It's very different than the other ones we did. But everybody's, and if you get the, once you have the pattern in the back of the book, if you need help with figuring out some colors and stuff, go to the back of the book, and I have pictures of as many of the gals that were in the class as I could get with their quilts. Some of them didn't have them all done, but you could see some of the color schemes that people used. So I think it was really, it's very helpful if you're trying to pick colors and stuff. So in the back of the book, there are people, you know, there's pictures of the students that were in the class. Okay, so see, I've got some little knots here. So I don't want those to be there. So I'm going to cut these. I'm going to trim these before we go any further. I just kind of trim as I go. I find it does better for me. Then I don't have messy backs. Get these little messy ties out of the way here. Nope, this one looks weird. So, oh well, it's just going to be, I guess it's just going to be weird. My machine must not have caught the bobbin thread right. So it looks a little weird, but you know what? It's fine. You're not going to see it that much. Okay. So there's that one. So now the next step is going to be the satin stitching. So I want that to be gray. So I'm going to take the yellow out. I'm going to put my gray in the bobbin. So you start changing your bobbin threads when the backing is on. Oops, second here. And my gray. So I have a big gray. I bought a great big spool of gray because you'll go through a lot of the whatever you're doing, your sashing colors and your satin stitches, you're going to go through quite a bit. So I bought a big spool of that. And I've got the smaller spool. I think we were okay with smaller spools of all the other colors for the black one. I think we just used one. I'm just going to check my back to make sure it looks okay, and it does. I think I got most of the tails cut. And then we'll put this one back in, and the final step is going to be the satin stitches. So it's going to do the satin stitching. Now I tried to start and stop everything on the outside edges so you don't get too many like trimming stuff inside here. I tried to keep the backs as close as I could. Like when I look at them now, I wished I would have done a couple things differently, but they still sew out really well. And if you trim as you go, all the trims are basically covered up by the satin stitching. So, and I was still using at the time, this was the old Floriani software that we did this in, and at the time it was the Suite, which was the basic level that they hadn't come out with the Pro version yet. So this was all done in the embroidery suite, and so the software's changed quite a lot since this was done. So, all right, so it goes around and it does the little triangles first. And I've got my matching thread in the bobbin. So most of the blocks are done like this. I'm going to keep this sewing, and we'll talk a little bit about the blocks. As you go through the blocks, you know, some of them just have one color in the background. Some have 2, 3, 4, and some of them even have 5. So I have several of the blocks that have had 5, you know, different colors in them. So you just kind of work your way through. You can pick your colors. You can, like I said, somebody asked me when they were asking about it originally, was it scrappy? Could you do it scrappy? Of course you can. You can just use your scraps. If you can cut them in 5-inch squares, that would be easier because a lot of the pieces, you know, a 5-inch square works really great. So, but this one's fun to do scrappy. It sometimes requires more thread if you're doing it scrappy. So our first one, we had lots of colors of thread in it because we were matching our fabrics. But all of the blocks are done the same way. So hopefully you understood my little trick of doing the first step with the fabric in there with the light background, and then just doing the entire, then skipping down to number 5. So hopefully you understood that. Because that way you don't have to do all the other trimming in the middle. So it's going to do the squares. It was funny because when I did this, I couldn't do a standard applique around anything because there was extra lines. So I had to hand draw all the appliques on. And there wasn't as much of an applique tool in the software at the time. So when I look at it now, it was a lot harder to do it because I couldn't do anything automated. I had to do all of it manually. So it took a little longer to do it, but they do sew out well. So hopefully you can see we're getting our satin stitches around there. I know when we did the black one, I mean, all the satin stitches were done in black. All the fabric, you know, the little decorative stitches were done with the color of the fabric. And then we used black. And I think that quilt had 7, maybe it had 7 colors too, because we used there's a Celtic circle in here. And next month we'll do the Celtic circles too, and the triangles. So you can go ahead and start working on your regular blocks, and then we'll talk about the Celtic circles. We'll do another block next month, and we'll do the Celtic circles and the triangles next month, so you can see how they're very simple because you don't have to do any trimming or anything on those. You just kind of put them in the hoop and go. But you do need quite a few of those for the quilt. So it's going around the little corners here. All the blocks take about 15 minutes. You know, the sewing time's about 15 minutes roughly. So none of them are terribly long. Some of them are a little bit shorter. This one was a little bit longer, but I wanted to show you one that I could trim a couple of the colors, so you can see some of the trimming. But I remember when we did this, a lot of us had not done a lot of applique, so boy, we were really good appliqueurs. You know, we were really good at applique and trimming by the time we got done with this quilt, because we had lots of experience then. So you do have to do quite a bit of trimming. I'd highly recommend these scissors. So if you don't have these double curved, these 6-inch double curved scissors, oh my gosh, these are like the best scissors for this, because you can get into all those little tiny little crevices. So, all right, so then it's going to go around the squares here. But I couldn't get over how much softer it was with the Hobbs batting. Because, you know, like I said, when we did this 9 years ago, basically the only cotton batting that we had easy access to was Warm and Natural. And it's very stiff in comparison to this. And I was so surprised. Judy was too. I took it to the store and she's like, oh my gosh, that's lighter weight. She just couldn't believe it, how soft it was. So, and if you wash them, they get softer too. So we're getting about done. We're getting around the middle, and I think it has to go around the yellow yet too. That's the last piece. So are there any questions? How many 5-inch squares do you need for each pattern? It depends, Mitzi. There's one for the background, and then there's one for each of the colors that's in it. So it depends on the block. Some of them will need 1 extra, some will need 2, some will need 3, and so on. And it does tell you at the top of the page what you need. So like at the top of the one that I did, so let me put the book in front of the camera here for a second. If you can see up here, see how it says for cutting, you need 1 5-inch square fabric A, which is your main fabric. You need 1 of fabric B, and it says a 2.5 by 2.5 inch square of fabric C. So see how I kind of took it and just did the corner, you know, and so I saved the rest of it. And then you need a 5-inch square of batting, a 5-inch square of backing, and then the stabilizer to fit the hoop. So it tells you in each one at the top what you need for the whole square. Okay? That was a good question. but that's why the 5-inch squares just work really well, because you know you can just kind of, and if you don't want to have to cut your squares, buy charm packs. You can just do charm packs. They're great. You do not repeat any blocks, Lynn. If you're just going to do the quilt as it is, the twin size, you repeat no blocks. There are 108 different piece blocks, and you only do one of each one. However, in the back of the book, so while this is stitching out, it's just about done. In the back of the book, I gave you some options. If you want to make a bigger quilt, you can make this any size you want. You make it smaller or you make it bigger. So I gave you some charts in the back of the book. So I'm going to pull this back a little bit. This is like an optional for a twin size bedspread. The quilt itself is like about the size of a twin quilt. It's not like a bedspread. Okay. So this one tells you how many blocks you need. You need 165 piece blocks instead of 108. So then yes, you would have to repeat some. You know, here's a full comforter if you want a full size, if you want a full bedspread. So I gave you some other options here if you want to make bigger quilts. Okay. And then here's some of the pictures of the girls' quilts that they made in some of the different classes. Like a lot of the gals did light backgrounds. Here's a couple gals that did dark ones. Here's a gal, Kathy's was so pretty. It was dark purple background. It was like dark purple. Oh my gosh, it was beautiful. And here's a lot of these were light. And then this one was brown. So Nancy did a dark brown background. And so she trimmed, you know, out from underneath. It was really pretty. And here's some of so this was a good place if you need some help to know what you want to do for backgrounds and stuff. Come look at the colors in the pictures in the back of the girls and some of their quilts. So like here's Margaret. Margaret used 5 different colors of purple. So she had a light background and used 5 different colors of purple on hers. It was really pretty. Oops, a second, I'm trying to get my thing to scroll up here. You're doing a queen bedspread. Okay, so yeah, so if you look at the queen bedspread, Lynn, it says to queen bedspread. You need 255 blocks, and there's 108 of them. So you're going to almost need 2 of each one. You're going to need about 2 of each one. So that would probably be. I see the page you're looking at. Okay, yeah. So like Judy is doing a king size bedspread. So she needed 306. So she's doing approximately 3 of each one. But some of them she only needed 2. Because the way it added up. So the layout here then shows you the blue boxes are where the piece blocks go, and the light color is your background fabrics. So you're going to need a lot more fabric too. Okay, so that's I did that for people because some people wanted to do bigger quilts. Oops, second, I'm having trouble getting things to go here. Okay, cool. All right. So this was a really fun class. There's a lot of pictures back here. So if you need some help looking at some of the colors, just go back and look at some of the pictures of the other girls' quilts. I tried to get almost everybody in here. I think there was about 10 people in each class. So there's a couple people missing, and you can see a lot of the people got their whole quilts done. Some of them didn't get the whole quilt done, but it was close. So, but a lot of them were just really pretty. And you can kind of see, like Paula did a queen size quilt, and hers was all done with a light background. This one here was really pretty. So, but that gives you an idea of some of the colors that they chose. Okay. All right, so here's our block. I think that turned out good. And here's the back. So there's still a little bit of trimming. I probably will go back, and there's a couple little strings in the center. And then these ones that are out here on the edges, if you don't take time to trim those, it's okay, because that's going to be in the seam, and you won't even see them. They'll all be done. So I try to get the ones trimmed in here. Like I had a little trouble. My machine decided it was going to goober right there, so I'm just going to have a goober right there. It's all right. I don't know why it did that, but it was unhappy evidently. So the bobbin must have been out of the tension a little bit. So okay. So I'm just going to leave it. It's fine. And then I'll trim these little hairs, and they won't even show. And when you put when I've got those strips on there, you can hardly see any little strings at all. Okay. Then I'm going to trim it. I'm going to take it over to my cutting table, and I'm going to trim it through all layers, all 3 layers, all the way around, 1/4 of an inch from the basting line. Okay. And that's how all those blocks are done. Oh, Lori, you love it? Is that what you're trying to tell me, Lori? I can't quite understand what you're trying to say. So, okay, so that's your kind of start working on your blocks. All of the blocks are the same. We'll do another one next month, and then we'll do some Celtic circles and some triangles that are the setting triangles. And then the following month, we'll do some border blocks, so you know how to do the border blocks. They are done a little differently, and they're trimmed differently. So that's the big thing, is they're trimmed differently. And if you have any questions, please just text me, call me, whatever, and I'll be more than happy to help you. But I'm enjoying making another quilt, so it's a lot of fun, and they're fun to do in the hoop, and they're small. So, okay. So are there any other questions? Does this make sense to everybody, how to get started? It is a lot of fun. I mean, they're really fun to do, and they're not hard. So, okay. So I think we're done for the evening. If you have any other questions, let me know. I'll put the camera up so I can say goodbye to everybody. It was very fun to do this. I was so excited to do it again. I haven't sewn this out for a long time. So, okay. So everybody have a wonderful week. Next week we're going to do the Valentine settee pillow. Second, I'll go grab it so you can see it. It's over here. So next week we're going to be doing the settee pillow for Valentine's Day, so we can get it done a little earlier this time. So this one was already done. And if anybody wants this design, it's $10 if you don't have it. A lot of you have it already, maybe. And that's what we're going to do next week. And then the last week in January, we're going to work on start working on the rug, the round rug. What do they call it? Slice rug. There we go. Okay. All right. So if anybody has questions, yes, Kathy, you can do this in your multiple needle. It's no problem. I've done a lot of these blocks in my multiple needle. I just happen to sit here and do them on my home machine, but yep, you can do them on your multiple needle as well. No problem. Okay. So if anybody has any questions, let me know, and I will see everybody next week. And thanks so much for all the well wishes for my dad, and he's doing so much better, and I told him about it, and he just made him smile. So thanks so much for all the well wishes and the prayers, because that helped, I know. And so anyway, we will see you all next week. And if anybody has any questions, let me know. Thanks, everybody. Good night.